This podcast brought to you by Ring. Save big right now on select Ring doorbells and cams and give the gifts that keep on giving. Find gifts that help handle all those deliveries.
Hey, again? Leave it behind the chair with the others.
And gifts that tell you when creatures are stirring.
Biscuit, get away from the ornaments. Good girl.
Shop the holiday sale for deals on select devices at Ring.com. Find unexpected gifts for less right now at Ring.com.
1, 2, 3, 4. Those are numbers. But you already knew that. If you want to know what number you're going to pay each month for your car, use Kelly Blue Book My Wallet on Auto Trader. They're really good at numbers. Auto Trader.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Unequal Sequel. My name is Dave and I am one of the two hosts of this absolutely amazing podcast.
And I'm Rich and I am the other one of the two hosts of this absolutely amazing podcast. Think of me as Shrek to Dave's donkey. I'm really big and he talks a lot.
Again, he's nailed it. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests their best ever sequel, worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course, we often drift off and talk about other movie stuff and sequels in general, or, you know, whatever comes into our heads, really.
And also, I have to say this, we do slightly spoil movies, but they're mostly over 20, 25, 30 years old. Yeah. So it's not our fault. They've been out for ages. Exactly. On today's episode, we are joined by Nathaniel Metcalfe.
Nathaniel is a comedian, he is a writer, and he's also a podcast presenter. He does a really cool podcast with Nick Helm called Fan Club, where they get a special guest each week and they talk about things that they're fans of. Be anything, but sometimes it's movies, which is really cool for us.
We're very excited to sit down with Nathaniel and chat all things sequels with him.
These are Nathaniel Metcalfe's Unequal Sequels. Enjoy!
Do you have that memory of the first time you got excited about a sequel or the first sequel you saw in the cinema?
Do you know what? One that I saw sequels in the cinema before this, but I remember being incredibly excited at the prospect of Back to the Future 2. But essentially from off the back of Back to the Future, off the back of the To Be Continued. I remember I'd ask my mum and dad, does that mean there is definitely one coming? And they had no interest and no idea what I was talking about. And it's like, it says To Be Continued. Does that mean it's definitely happening? Is that definitely happening? And I guess ones like that. I guess Flash Gordon's another one, isn't it? That has a the end question mark that you never get the sequel to. Or So I remember being excited about the prospect. What would have been the first sequel? It's a good question. No, I can't think.
Well, let's talk about Back to the Future 2 because I love the fact that how old were you when you saw that?
So I was born in 79, so Back to the Future came out when I was 6, and I think Back to the Future 2 is 1990 or 1991. And I remember the other thing I'd do was films that had sequels, I would try and work out when the discrepancy in years between them and try and work out if it's still possible. Like, it's been 3 years. That's still coming, right? It's still coming. and trying to work out from other films how likely it would be that there would be a second Back to the Future film.
Do you like Back to the Future 2 more than Back to the Future, the original?
No.
Because Dave does.
but I do like Back to the Future 2, and I like the third one. In some ways, the second one might be the weakest, but I like it a great deal. But it's funny now, when you watch Back to it does feel now like I was totally convinced that everything matched up for years and years, and it was all just this incredibly clever 3-part story. But when you watch the first one now, it's very clear that the first one exists and 2 and 3 are very much their own thing, and they exist in this sort of they're sort of sequels to each other, but very much like it's cleverly done how they've all that stuff as well, where they kind of pretend there's all that stuff about him being called a chicken and things in the first film. It's like, it's not in it. It's only in the second and third one. But they try and kind of gaslight us into thinking all this sort of plot was established in the first one, which it wasn't. But I think they're terribly clever. And I think Back to the Future 2 is like, and the first one is to some extent, They're like little variants on It's a Wonderful Life. And Hill Valley is very similar to, what's it called? Bedford Falls, isn't it? And it's wonderful. And all that kind of him finding out his dad's dead at the grave and things is all like just echoes little scenes from that. And It's a Wonderful Life is probably my favorite movie, and I like all those little touches where it's sort of referencing that movie and doing a sort of a version of it that's not quite that.
I hadn't thought of that before, but that's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, they just do it time travel, so they go into the bad future and they get to see what it would be like.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I like how it's a kind of it's like a sort of clever version of it, and I'm sure like probably I don't think it's a knockoff. I think it's entirely intentional kind of homage to, I think, to the fact that a lot of the scenes are like the same and things. He has to have these moments that are just taken straight out of it, and you go, it's just the same, almost like story mechanics but with different characters, and the same kind of scenes play out.
I love Dave's face when he just realised what you were talking about then. It's almost like his whole life just suddenly made sense.
Yeah. I had never seen it like that before. I haven't watched It's a Wonderful Life until like last year. I know, that's bad of me. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, you're right. I think I want to talk about the end of Back to the Future 1 as well, because if you ever even watch the extras, they talk about that line where it's your kids, Marty. And originally they didn't know what that meant. They really hated that they wrote that into the scripts. So they're like, now we have to try and get something about the kids in the sequel. And I find that brilliant. Like, what a mistake. Brilliant mistake, I would say.
But it's a joke, isn't it? It's a joke in the first film that they then have to sort of make reality.
Yeah, keep going with.
And I always thought it was funny that they turn out to be arseholes. I think it's like a great... Yeah, that's like, oh yeah, well, like that'd be the worst thing your kids could be in the future. Yeah. Just like, oh yeah, they're arseholes.
So when you were 6, did you all you want was a hoverboard as well and the shoes?
Well, when I was 6 would be when Back to the Future came out. So I was probably 10 or 11 when Back to the Future 2 came out. But also I didn't buy for a minute that they would exist in 2015. It felt like, I was very much like, nah, I don't buy it. And even that kind of future, the clothes in it and things were like, I don't buy that. It doesn't feel that far ahead. But I remember like I really loved it. And I really love how, it just repeats the sort of scenes again of the first film. And for years, I had no idea that Crispin Glover wasn't in it until you kind of watch it and go, oh yeah, it's not him. He's not in it. No. And it's just, I really like when it just revisits, because the thing I liked about Back to the Future 2 was that it was more than you're expecting. In that all the pre-publicity for it was, they go to the future in this one. You go, right. But the idea that then they basically revisit the first film again is the thing that I think's really clever about it. That's the sort of best idea. The idea that you can revisit another film.
It's like the greatest hits. That's why it's so good.
Yeah.
You get this excellent new film, but you also get the best parts of the original film.
Yeah, and you get to see bits of it. It's like when DVDs came out and you'd get deleted scenes, which as a concept sort of blew my mind, I think, because you could never... The idea that there was more of a film from the past that you already loved, and you're watching a new bit of an old film. It's a similar thing to that, I think. And there is that bit where he's following Biff around and you see Biff walking around the 50s, but it's just a scene you haven't seen. I loved it. Really loved it. I don't dislike Back to the Future 2 at all.
That's good. I'm worried.
But it might be the weakest. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that's unfair.
So you're a 1-3-2 man?
I think so. But now I'm saying it, I think I do like them all. Maybe I'm being silly. It's weird in Back to the Future 2. I know, again, it's just a gag, but I think it's weirder that Marty McFly's daughter is played by Michael J. Fox. I'm sure it's just a gag and she's only in for a minute. But I still think, but why would she look like him? Why would she? It was so in the trailer they could go, Michael J. Fox, and Michael J. Fox. It's that sort of thing. It's that, but it's still the oddest bit. And I think it's the bit that pulls me out of it most, where you go, it's not even a character. It's sort of him putting on a slightly higher voice.
How can we prove there's a family resemblance?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll just get Michael to do it. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, it is fine, but it's still an odd moment. Odd choice.
What is your best sequel ever?
I was thinking about this when you said it, and it's probably good that I haven't had a lot of time to think about it. And I think it's going to haunt me, because as soon as you commit to one, I'm going to spend the rest of my life going, it's not that, actually, it's this. And it's an interesting question, because I've never thought about it. It never occurred to me to think about my favourites. But the one I picked was Desperado. because I think it's pretty much one of, if not the best film of the 1990s, I think. I think it's incredible and doesn't get nearly enough credit for how good it is. And it's a sequel, but it's the genre I like, which is sequel/remake. And I like that. I like any film that does that. Any film that sort of works as both things. That's one. The 78 Invasion of the Body Snatchers is one. Works as a sequel and as its own thing, as a remake.
Yeah.
And there's been a few recently that I keep seeing and going, oh, that's another one. That's sequel remake.
Yeah, the Suicide Squad.
Yeah. I guess, sequel remake, yeah. That's more like a course correction though, isn't it? Where they've just gone, let's just do it like everyone thought it was going to be in the first place.
The first one was so bad, they couldn't go down from there, could they? It was only up.
Yeah. They couldn't get any lower.
Dave was really, really excited when he told me what your choice was, because Desperado is one of his favourite films ever.
Yeah.
I've seen it, brilliant film. Where did you first see it, Dave?
I saw it in what I'm going to call my cinematic awakening. So I reckon probably the greatest year of film, maybe 99. I saw it between 99 and 2002, 2003 was when I really got into cinema. So Desperado, I can't remember who let me borrow it or where I watched it. I probably watched it on ITV or something with adverts in, and it still blew me away. I hadn't really seen anything like that. I was so used to like Schwarzenegger or Stallone kind of action. And then there's this, and I hadn't watched Hard Boiled or anything at that point. So this kind of flamboyant shooting he does when he's like whipping the guns, and it's almost like an extension of him, like kind of like John Wick is nowadays. I just blew it away. And Simon Hayek, when I was a young boy, was just unbelievable. It was just great.
Well, not only is he whipping the guns, the thing that's great about that is he whips a gun so a bullet can go round a corner.
Before Wanted.
It sort of makes sense and doesn't make any sense at all. It works like a cartoon in that way, where nothing that's happening actually makes sense. But there's a weird sort of Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner logic to it all. It makes you go, sure, if you did that to a gun, if you swung a gun, the bullet would go around a corner. Why wouldn't it? Of course it would. And it's brilliant, all that stuff.
Yeah, the whole action is outrageous. It's like no gunshot would ever fire you that back normally. But in Desperado, every gunshot is like being kicked by a donkey, I imagine. It's just, since everyone flying, it's over the top. It's comical, but it's so good. And
I really love the rocket launcher in the guitar case. I think that's my favourite thing. Never reloads it. Shoots about 15 missiles out of that. Never reloads it once. And also the fact that that's the original mariachi. The original guy that plays the mariachi is the guy who we're gonna do a sequel. We want to get you back in it. And he's like, oh yeah, brilliant. I'll be the mariachi again. And like, no. Sorry, just guy that doesn't say anything, but you've got a guitar case or rocket launcher in it. So
it's the next best thing, considering he gets all his mates back, and they are just like pals of his who are they're not actors, they're just pals, and they get to be in it again. And it sort of works. It's got like he casts enough kind of names that once you've got 3 or 4 you go, well, actually, you don't need anyone else. I can still just have all my mates back in it. And that thing where he's playing not the mariachi, but he's kind of like, he's still a mariachi. He's still part of the gang. And that's really nice. It's like, it's kind of a really sweet to include them all. And it has that air about it. It's got that thing where it does still feel like they're mates. And it feels like quite a pally. It's like the most impressive sort of student film ever or something. It's just incredibly, like, every bit of it works and is sort of clever. And clever's probably a weird word to sort of apply to it, but it is clever because it's just every kind of shot there's like an idea, and it's just like, I've had another idea, it's this, I've had another, and it's just the bit where he's shot in the arm, and you get that shot of him with a little kid walking along a wall, and as he's walking along the wall, it's painting a red bloodstain.
Yeah,
it's just all like lovely. Really,
that's a lovely shot.
Everything's interesting. There's always something to look at, and it's sort of funny. And you can take it as read, and it's just actiony, or you can you appreciate it on one level as it's really kind of balletic, totally. It's pure action, and yet it's also funny. That what's happening is funny, and it's silly. And the tone of it is always consistent. You never go, what is this? It's always like, it's everything. I love it. From the first time I saw it at the London Film Festival, and my brother had seen it in the States and said, oh, you've got to see this movie, Desperado. And I saw it at the London Film Festival, and it was at the Odeon West End, and it was packed because it was at London Film Festival. And I think the experience I had, I suspect, was probably not really repeated at its main cinema release, because I don't think it did particularly well here. I didn't know a lot of people that saw it, but I was telling everyone there to see it. So it was one of the few times where I saw it in a packed screen. I was really looking forward to it because my brother had said, oh, it's really great. Within like 10 seconds, I was on board. As soon as Steve Buscemi comes in, he's just got this bit which is so funny. And it's before, like, it's got so many jokes about the kind of, these guys are arseholes, not like these class acts. So it's funny that this little tiny man is the smallest man in this room full of huge Mexican guys who all got knives and all look like villains. And he's basically goading them. And and it's funny about how much, and it's such a great, that little bit feels like it's Steve Buscemi almost at the height of Steve Buscemi-ness of being this. And it feels like he's doing a kind of performance that feels like it's the kind of thing that Steve Martin would do. It's that sort of level. And it's that kind of funny. It's like funny. Every line's funny. And it feels like someone like Steve Martin probably couldn't have done it any better. But it feels like it's almost like that's the kind of performance it is. It's like a Steve Martin 80s performance with that many jokes in it. And that's before any actions happened. And it just does all that stuff about, you don't see his face. And just when you think it's going to happen, it just come out of the shadow, it doesn't. And then you just see it happening. And you have and it's just, and as soon as the action starts, you do get this completely overblown, over the top. It kind of works because it feels like you're watching a dream, or it's told like a fable. So it doesn't feel like, so it kind of gets you into the world of it without you ever kind of questioning the reality of it.
Yeah.
And then it continues like that because you're already bought into the idea of it. It's so kind of, it is clever what they've done. Everything of it's really, and at that point, by the time it kind of cuts to the sort of opening credits, it's already like a 5-star movie. It's like, it's already like,
it's amazing.
And it hasn't started yet. And it's already brilliant. And it's like that. It's just, and when you think of it, it's a nice way of thinking about films, which isn't very screenwritery. I really like films that feel like they're very cleverly, tightly written things. And you see films from like It's a Wonderful Life's one, or like a Billy Wilder film where you go, God, everything in this makes sense. And yet when you watch things like Desperado, it actually feels like more or less improvised. And what it actually is just, it's not doing any of these screenwritery rules at all. And I know lots of people that write, and they're very serious about writing, mainly sort of sitcoms and things. When I talk to them, it's all rules. And it's like, I always think there isn't a rule to it. You can just do scenes, which is what this is. It's just scenes and set pieces for 90 minutes, and then you're out.
That's where the best stuff comes from, though, right? Breaking the rules and not following the rules. That's where you get absolute gems from. People going, oh, I didn't follow any. I don't know what the rules are. I didn't follow them.
Exactly. It's more that they don't know what the rules are. I think you get bad films often by people saying, I'm breaking the rules. And it's like, no, they're there for a reason. It almost comes from someone going, it'd be good if this happened, right? And then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And then at the end of it, you've had 90 minutes and you go, that's what they kind of should be. Just tons of ideas that are kind of squidged together that kind of like, the film almost feels mythological to me in that it feels like, surely this has been done before, but I'd never seen any of it before. Every idea feels like, I've never seen this in a film, followed by another bit where you go, I've never seen this happen in a film. Never seen this happen. And it follows an almost kid logic of things that you'd be like, yeah, you could do that. You couldn't do that. Yeah. And it sort of invites you to kind of laugh at the idea of it. Sort of takes it seriously. It's like, no, in this world, all this stuff can happen. It feels like someone playing with toys or something. It's like, you could do that. Like the idea, like the sort of whipping the gun and a bullet going around the corner. It's a sort of kid logic. Yeah. It's that sort of stuff about it that's like, oh yeah, if I fired a gun, it's going to blast you through a window. Or you're going to travel for 8 feet in the air. And everything is like, and then it does it, and there's gag after gag, and then you've got the gag with two guys, him and the other guy trying to shoot each other, and they're trying to find a gun that's got a bullet in it. Yeah. So they've realised at that point, and you feel like that probably is improvised. Like, it'd be funny, they'd be going, wait, surely we've been throwing these guns away. What's the likelihood that there's going to be guns with bullets in? And of course there isn't. It's this sort of, it's a great kind of like almost like Russian roulette scene with people picking up different guns. Has this one got a bullet? No.
Yeah.
This one? No. And it sort of, and then that becomes funny. All of it's sort of gags and sort of sight gags and things, but they work in the context of it.
That the mariachi gets hurt a lot. He's not a superhero. He's not Arnold Schwarzenegger who just like wraps a bandage around his arm and carries on. He literally gets broken like 4 times in this movie. It's great.
Does, but he also is able to jump backwards from one roof. You don't really see him land. So in some ways he'd be like, yeah, you'd be dead though. He both gets hurt and can survive incredible injury. It's a bit of both.
They walk away from an explosion. This is probably one of the coolest moments when you walk away from an explosion and they don't turn around and don't get like blown away. I think that's an amazing image. I just wanted to say that your point about everything felt fresh and, you know, you hadn't seen it before, and if they had a bigger budget, they probably would have ruined it, kind of thing. I think that's maybe because it was such a low budget that they had to think up, like, on their feet, like, what should we do now? We haven't got all these fake bullets and guns and explosions. And apparently they only had like 10 extras, so they just kept putting different wigs on them to get shot and stuff like that. So I
think there's 2 stuntmen that are the same guys flying through windows all the time.
Apparently, you're not saying it didn't have a massive release over here, but apparently it's the biggest profit difference from an original to a sequel. So the sequel made so much more profit than the original one did. It's like 250% more profit than the original made.
But did the original only make like £1?
Yeah, well, it only cost like 45p to make.
Exactly.
He just bribed everyone with like a Twix. Like, he just shared it, you know, we'll just make it with my friends, you know. I think it's like 7 million the original cost to make. And then the second one cost like 10 million and made like 65.
Well, the first one was made for 7,000.
Was it $7,000? Sorry, yeah.
And I think this was made for $7 million.
Yeah.
And I think the idea was he just wanted to do something that, if this worked, that his idea was, I'll be able to work for the rest of my life because I'll be able to say, well, I did that for 7 million. So it's to do something and make it feel like it's more expensive. And that seems mad now when you think of it, like 7 million. Because it doesn't at all feel like you're watching a kind of... And it would work that way if it felt like you were watching something where you go, oh, that's great, considering it was 7 million, and you can kind of see the joints. But it works as like... You can put it up against any other action movie. And most other action movies would come out wanting, I think. And it costs nothing. I remember when we were watching it at that first London Film Festival screening, the audience it was insane because everyone couldn't believe what they were watching. And I've never had this before. The guy in front of me turned round almost to just go, wow. It was just every bit of it was just like it was just like people couldn't really contain themselves. I've never I kind of when I watched it again day before yesterday for this, and I was thinking I miss how excited I was watching that. And I was going, I can't remember the last time I was that excited watching a movie. And maybe it's exceptional, and maybe it was the age I was, but it does feel like, I'd like a bit of that now. Yeah. I'd like to see it like occasionally you would like, I was trying to think, what was the last film that I was really excited about when I came out? And there's lots of things I like, but just stuff where I came out of it was just completely kind of, my mind was blown. I just loved every minute of it. And it still feels like that. It's like one of those movies, similarly to something like Back to the Future, where you couldn't turn it on halfway through and go, oh, just watch this bit. Because it's always going to be, oh, I love this bit.
Yeah.
Oh, now I love this bit. I love this bit. I love this bit. It's the end of the film. You'll get to the whole film because it's always something, there's no fat on it or anything. It's just great bit after great bit after great bit. It's just, it's relentless.
I can't believe they showed this at the London Film Festival. That wouldn't be now, would it?
No, but at the time, I think it was, following El Mariachi was kind of it's an action movie, but I guess it also played as like an art house movie, really, because it's this low budget Mexican movie. So it wasn't like it didn't feel like you're watching, it sort of crossed both worlds, really. And it's probably Desperado that was like the crossover for him, where he's like, oh no, well, El Mariachi only looks like that because I had $7,000. Whereas if I have $7 million, it's supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be a big action movie. And that's the order I saw them in. I saw Desperado first. And when you watch it, you do appreciate it you do appreciate what El Mariachi is.
Yeah.
It does have lots of similar, there is that sort of fast cutting, which I think was coming in that because he didn't have in sync sound, so he had to keep cutting away from people talking, so there'd always be action going on. So, but right. It was, but like it does, you do kind of appreciate of like what a great piece of work it is, considering it's done so cheaply, and what an achievement it is to have made it at all. And
getting a good performance from Quentin Tarantino as well.
I watched the trilogy backwards. I think I watched Once Upon a Time in Mexico, and then everyone went, "Oh, there's more," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And they go back and go, "Oh, this is better. This is Desperado is better, definitely."
Yeah. What do you think of the third one?
No? I quite like it. Do you know what? It's sort of, when I first saw it, I liked it a lot more then than when I saw it again. One of the things I like about it, and I like about a lot of his films, is that you can tell that actors have shown up and they're doing like a day or 2 days, and you can tell often when someone's talking, the reverse shot is not who they're talking to. There's a lot of that about it, and I quite like that they do almost feel like these weird jigsaw puzzles. And in that one, you've got that bit where Willem Dafoe halfway through has plastic surgery, so is in bandages for the rest of the film, and you go, there's no way that's Willem Dafoe for the rest of the film. But I also like that. I like that's how he makes films, and I like that he's the least stressful filmmaker I can imagine. He just seems to take everything in his stride. It's like he does it very naturally. So all these things that I think would cause like other directors ulcers, he just has this sort of, we'll just do that, or we'll just kill him off. Doesn't matter. And it's like he changes his movies while they're filming them, drastically. And like this, when you hear about the making of Desperado, even though it's 7 million, it's only 7 million, I still would imagine that studios like, what are you doing? Have you got what are you making? And it's like, we sort of got a script, but we might not do that. We'll just see what happens on the day. It really does feel like you cannot. And yet he's just got this sort of, I think he's got this sort of self-confidence that's just that, oh no, it'll be fine. It's going to be great.
He is director, producer, editor, composer. I think he plays the guitar in most of this as well. He's his own little studio, isn't it?
Yeah.
Robert Rodriguez. Do you like his other recent work? Do you think he's tilted off a little bit recently?
Kind of. I mean, there's stuff that's not, there's stuff that's not really aimed at me. I remember seeing the first Spy Kids movie and going, it is good, but it's not aimed at me.
Yeah.
But it's well done. And there's a lot of stuff like that. And I kind of appreciate it more that it's got such a kind of voice to it. It's always obvious when he's done it. And I still like that. I wasn't really into, what was the movie, Elite, a Battle Angel, I didn't really like. I mean, it still feels like a Robert Rodriguez movie. And there's still enough about it that's kind of, entertains me.
Yeah. I didn't hate it. I've seen worse movies than Battle Angel, I think. Her massive eyes just freaked me out far too much.
It was odd. Although I read, I think recently he's done a deal with HBO Max or something, and I'd never really thought of him in these terms until recently, when before that I was going, oh wow, it's got such that kind of Mexican identity, something you don't see anywhere else. And this is almost something that's been kind of championed with him now, where he's gone, oh, you've always done this. And this kind of, so in America now, it feels like, oh, you're one of the few filmmakers that represents that kind of Latina culture. So it's like, and I was thinking that with, what was it? Something, maybe that was Elite, a Battle Angel. That you have these kind of, even in these movies, you've always got this kind of, I think you had like Mexican flags. You always got like Mexican characters. And the Spy Kids movie has that thing where it's like, oh yeah, it's like a Mexican family, but it's this sort of very middle class sort of Mexican. You don't really see that. And it's weird that someone is on the quiet while making all these action movies is also doing this sort of almost like socially aware thing where he's kind of promoting this kind of the country he's from and things, and it's just completely and off the back of it you think, God, what an influence he's had. And anyone who's had kind of, the amount of kind of Latina actors that have kind of gone through it and then gone on to other things, you think that what he's actually been doing is almost like a public service, but he's been doing it on the quiet while making big action movies. That you sort of go, oh right, yeah, he's got this almost like very kind of socially aware, almost like patriotism that's been going on in the background, where he's just been promoting, I guess, like people from his own country and people from Latina backgrounds. And it now feels like HBO Max are kind of talking about, well, he's that guy, isn't he? He's like the kind of Latina director. And you go, oh yeah, of course. Of course he is. And I was thinking that when I was watching something recently where you go, oh yeah, of course that's what he's doing the whole way.
Is that the Zorro TV series he's making? He's doing I saw he was doing a Zorro TV series.
Well, he was going to do the Antonio Banderas Zorro originally. And that was one that I was always really looking forward to. And I never quite worked out what happened or why he didn't end up doing it. He seemed to get, I don't know if he was removed or whether he left the project, but that was all, the development was all him. But then it was Martin Campbell, I think.
It was Martin Campbell.
And then he's got more Machete Kills sequels and stuff coming. Like,
that is the problem. I think he gets to the point where he's realised he could do it so much that I think there's an element where he kind of does it too much, where it's almost like, it feels almost like the effort going into it feels less. Like, oh, we could do this. And it's fun, I think, when he did Planet Terror. That was fun.
Yeah.
But it's almost the idea that not every film should be like this, though. You don't have to do, like, you could... It's fun to do it once, but don't keep doing it.
It's like Spy Kids 4. I'm not sure we needed it. You know, like, you've done it now. It's fine.
But then I also think of him like, he does have this kind of production company, and I'm sure a lot of it for him is pushing forward with projects that are making money or someone's asking for. So he's like, yeah, we'll totally do that, because he must employ so many people as well. He must, like, there must be a sort of responsibility element to him. He's also running a company that employs people, and it's like, yeah, of course we'll do that. If someone asks for another Spy Kids, he's like, yeah, we'll be making one of them then.
I think there's a market for them. There's definitely a market for them. They do hold... I know some people that love the Spy Kid movies and the Lava Girl and Shark Boy or whatever it is. And what's the recent one? We Are Heroes, what they recall with Pedro Pascal. But yeah, like you said, they're not my cup of tea and not aimed at me.
Yeah, so. But I kind of, I think that's it. It's fine as well, isn't it? It's like, yeah, they're for kids.
Yeah, Spy Kids.
Yeah.
Says it in the title.
Yeah. And I imagine kids probably love them.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, my son does. He likes the Spy Kids movies. Yeah, he's
there you go then.
Signed up for that.
I saw one and I remember going, really enjoyed it, but it seems pointless me. It seems pointless me watching these, really.
I think Spy Kids 4 has got the lowest rating I've ever seen on IMDb. I think it's like 2.9 or something. It's really low.
But even that feels like I who's voted that?
Heartless.
Little kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is the most disappointing sequel you've seen? So not like the worst sequel, but one you really were looking forward to and you came out and you were just like, oh.
I don't know. It probably is the one I've picked as my worst one. I think I took that almost to be disappointing.
Really? So bad and disappointing.
Bad and disappointing. God, what has disappointed me? I think I'm quite easily pleased as well. I really do. I think I'm kind of, or not pleased, but I think I'm kind of, it takes a lot for me to go, I hate that. Recently, not that I was overly disappointed, recently Glass, I thought was awful. Just thought it was terrible. But equally, I hadn't really kept up with M. Night Shyamalan. But I did like Unbreakable a lot when it came out. And I hadn't really kept up with a lot of his stuff. Because I sort of got that impression, like, I think I'm good at knowing my own mind. There's often a point where I go, I'm not going to enjoy this. And so I avoid it. I don't feel I have to see everything. I kind of have like, I get the vibe I'm not going to like that at all. I usually know exactly how much I'm going to like a film. It's nice to be surprised.
Yeah.
But I kind of have an idea of like,
I think Glass is the absolute perfect one to choose for this. Because
it's really good. Sorry, I'm still not.
It's
Unbreakable is brilliant and Split is brilliant. And then how much more could you shit the bed than Glass? I mean, honestly.
Well, I was kind of up for Glass entirely off the back of Unbreakable.
Yeah, everyone was.
But I would say that I think days before that came out, I watched Split for the first time. And I went, okay, well, I should watch this. And I didn't like Split either. I was like, don't like this. But you go, well, that's fine. Because it's not really about this guy. It's about... Yeah. And when you watch it, you go, this is just... it's like every decision made is like, why? What? Why is it... So that was something I was disappointed in just because I sort of was... I was shocked at how bad it was. Like, really? Is this what we're doing? Really? And similarly, it's a good... It's interesting to talk about in the context of Robert Rodriguez's movies because it has that same thing where you watch it and go, oh, right, I see. It hasn't got these actors in. You've hired Samuel L. Jackson for X number of days. You've hired Bruce Willis for X number of days. And that's what it feels like. They're all kind of, none of them really interact. They're all just like on their own little bit. Bruce Willis seems like he's in the whole film for maybe 10 minutes or something. And after the whole build-up of it, the idea that, sure, we know he can't survive in water, but the idea that the story of Unbreakable is that character's story arc is he drowns in a puddle is the most mental thing I've ever. And it's like you go absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if you think that's somehow poetic or something, but that is the most ridiculous thing. If you go right, because I would say
in the puddle.
I would say Split. I don't like it. I don't care for it. But you could then, in theoretically, have gone right. Well, then the sequel to Unbreakable is still Glass. You don't need Split. But if you watch Unbreakable and went, oh, I like that. You know, there's another one. Watch that. See what you think of it. If you've bought into any part of Unbreakable and you go, yeah, the next movie is this movie, it's insane that you would accept that as a sequel to Unbreakable. It's insane. It's insane. They spend the whole movie, which again I think is meant to be like a kind of rug pull. They sort of set up the ending, and there's all they keep talking about how they need to go to. Is it somewhere like the Empire State Building or something? You go, right, okay, and it's like they never get there, and they go, no, we're just going to be in a car park in a, and it's like what? So I don't know if it's a rug pull, like it's meant to be like, you thought it was going to all be a big ending at the. I don't know. I presumably it's on purpose. Because otherwise, it's even madder. It's like, but by kind of showboating about this big ending and then not giving it to you. I guess the point is that you're meant to be like, we thought this was going to happen, but it didn't.
Yeah.
But instead, it's just disappointing. It's just going, well, can we not get the film you've been talking about for? I've had to watch this. I've had to watch the whole film. Can you at least give us the ending that's been promised during the whole film? And instead you get like, Bruce Willis drowning in a puddle and James McAvoy jumping on a car or something. It's just like they don't even really meet, or none of them really interact, or it's just it's bonkers.
It's so
absolutely
weird.
Bonkers.
That's a perfect answer, mate. I love how you started that conversation with like, well, I don't think I found anything disappointing or bad, and then you laid into it. Brilliant.
It's awful. It just makes me think, are you mad? It's mad.
Yeah.
It's mad.
I can't wait for the next choice. What was your worst sequel ever?
Well, I would almost put this in disappointing more than worst.
Oh.
But it was because the answer is Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. And I saw this when it came out. And I would have been 8 when I saw this.
Were you excited for it?
Yeah, you bet your life. Like, of course I was.
Superman.
It's another Superman movie. And now, even as a child and as an adult, it annoys me when people have a go at Superman 3. Always loved it. Always thought it was brilliant.
Yep,
and when I watch it now, I still think it's great. And I think the thing it set out to do, I think it does really well.
Yeah.
It takes a Superman movie and does a comedy that works in it. And the first, like, Superman, the movie especially, probably less so the second one, is really funny all the way through. So it kind of works. And the comedy in Superman 3 works really well. And it also has just great bits. That's the one that has the combine harvester thing coming towards the kid. And that to me feels like one of the sort of most kind of iconic moments in all of them. But the fourth one, and people talk about, that's what annoys me most about it. People talk about the third one, like the third one's a bad movie.
Not compared to
the fourth one it's so awful. And I was looking forward to it. And I would say that film changed the way I thought about films, because it was the first time, and I can pinpoint it, that I realised that some films were shit. It never occurred to me. I was 8. Yeah. All films were brilliant.
We've all had it. We've all felt
films.
It.
There's not the idea that there are bad ones.
Yeah.
And the idea that a bad one would be a kind of wolf in sheep's clothing. The one you're going to see as bad is a new Superman film. It's like, I think they think kids will be like, if anything, they went, it'll be right for kids though, won't it?
Yeah.
And it's like, absolutely not. I could see through it. Like, there's a sort of panic when you start watching it. Like, what's going on? What? It's almost like it's a weird experience. It's one of the oddest things, because I remember being so, you almost want to, like, it's like a panic. It's like you're having a panic attack watching it because you can't believe what's going on. It's like, this is awful. The bit that really blew my mind in it, there's a bit in it where you never ever see Clark Kent become Superman on screen.
Yeah.
And it's mad. And there's a bit where he leaves camera shot, then re-enters as Superman.
Yeah.
And you think, could you not afford a shirt? Was that like, is the budget so low at this point that the idea of him tearing a shirt would be like, oh, come on. How many shirts? We can't afford a shirt.
I mean, the budget did get wrecked. So they started out with like a 45 million budget, and it got slashed to like 16 million.
Yeah.
Which is hence why it was like so bad. Like, but and hence why they shot in Milton Keynes instead of New York. It's like, oh, this is the UN building in Metropolis, but in real life, it's Milton Keynes bus station.
Yeah, but it also doesn't match, like, by doing it as well. I just think kids watch those films more than anyone. And the buildings don't even match the build. The Daily Planet isn't the Daily Planet anymore. It's like, where are we? What's going on? None of it makes any sense. It was so bad. And like, there's things about it that I go, it's almost, I love Christopher Reeve. And I think he's still, it's like, it's bad despite the fact that a lot of these guys are really still doing their best with it. And it's such a shame. You go, they're still doing it. I mean, Christopher Reeve is almost like, he's still kind of the perfect Superman. It's just such a, and I don't know if it's because you can't help but compare him. Everyone else feels lacking. But he's got that sort of innate kind of goodness about him, hasn't he? He's got a real, like, you really buy into the idea that he's a good guy. But and it's got Gene Hackman in it as Lex Luthor, which you can kind of watch. And there's things about it you go, that's still good, really. Except it isn't none of it's good. No. It's all appalling. That was my big thing for it, because it's the movie I always think about. Like, oh right, that was like it was like a moment in my life when you go, that's when I realised that some films are bad. And I think a lot of people, I don't know, maybe you do have it. Most people go, well, I had no idea when that happened. Whereas to me, it's like, I can pinpoint exactly where I was when I realised that not all films are good.
Wow.
And it's Superman 4. It's like, it's a specific film where you go, wow. And I was 8. It isn't like the audience that they thought would get away with it. It's like, absolutely not. It was, for an 8-year-old, it was appalling. I was really like shocked. I kind of couldn't get my head around it.
Do you remember the scene that really?
No, I think it was
right from the beginning.
Well, I think there was a lot of that. I think the big problem I had was a lot of him going off screen and coming back as Superman, because it's sort of weirdly, I think at that age, that's kind of what you want to see. You could probably have made a really cheap Superman film that's even cheaper than Superman 4, and I'd have liked it more. If you just saw him, like, I just want to see him
rip his
shirt off, or change in some weird way, or do a little tornado and become Superman, or do something. The idea that he leaves the screen, and there's a sort of static shot, and walks back on, it felt like, this didn't feel like a movie. It felt like you're watching something like, it was like Rent-A-Ghost or something. It was just a weird, like, it was like, why is this a film? I don't know, like, surely you could have done this better.
It somehow makes really good actors look both hammy and cheesy, which is a great thing for a sandwich, but not great for Superman.
Yeah.
You know, I think, like, I don't know how it does it. It makes Christopher Reeve look bad. It makes Gene Hackman look bad. And it's not them. It's got to be something in the script.
It's Nuclear Man. He makes everyone look bad.
But that's it as well. You kind of think, oh, it's like straight away he's got no personality or anything. There's nothing about him that feels like he's a good villain. And who is he? He's just this sort of made up...
Oh, I know a story about that. So he was supposed to be, Dolph Lundgren was supposed to be Nuclear Man, but he was making Masters of the Universe for the same production company that makes this.
Canon,
He's making Masters of the Universe, Canon. And so they got someone from like the middle of nowhere, someone who knew someone who looks a bit like, was it Yorkshire, was it?
Yeah, he's from Yorkshire.
someone who looks a bit like Dolph Lundgren from the back, thinking that they were then going to cut Dolph Lundgren into it later when he finished making He-Man, and He-Man overruns so much that they couldn't do it. Hence why they had to make his voice. They had to get Gene Hackman to do his voice because he had
bizarre.
like a Yorkshire accent. They were like, no.
I mean, that does kind of make sense. It does, yeah, looking at him. And that would have sort of made some kind of sense with the sort of scale of someone like Dolph Lundgren and being, it would feel like, oh yeah, I guess this guy could fight Superman. So I can kind of understand that. I don't know.
It's just
awful. And just that I like the others so much, and it's just a real stain. And it's such a waste now that you think, oh man, that was like, that was your one chance to get Christopher Reeve and Gene Hackman back, and you did that.
And it killed off Superman.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, that's the end.
Yeah, Superman gone for 20 years after this, wasn't it? It's like, but there are just so many bits in it that are weird. Like where Nuclear Man kidnaps the girl, flies her off into space, and she doesn't freeze to death.
Oh yes,
what is that about?
Oh yeah,
and she can still breathe. And then Superman brings her back, and she doesn't burn up on re-entry. Like what?
I think that is again. I think it's that kind of thing that you imagine. It's like, oh, that'd be all right for kids. The kids won't. Kids will accept that, and you go, no. Basically, people blowing up in space is what I spent 80% of my time thinking about when I was 8. Yeah. Like, that's basically all I was thinking about.
Yeah.
It's like, why do you wear them? All right, you blow up. Right, got it. And I'd think about that. I'd think about that all the time. So these things are exactly the kind of things you obsess over when you're 8. They're not the kind of things you'd go, it's probably fine.
And how do you get rid of a nuclear-powered villain? Oh, I can drop him in a nuclear power station. That'll work. What? That was Didcot Power Station in Oxfordshire, and it's coal-fired for a start. But how does that not make him stronger? You're literally just giving him more. And also, his Nuclear Man's main ability appears to be he can grow his fingernails an extra inch. Like what? What is this nonsense?
He's also powered by the sun, so just attack him at night.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Just wait till it's dark.
And there's a bit when the Superman's flying past New York, and they just couldn't even afford moving boats on the water. All the boats seem to have stopped.
New York. Yeah.
It's awful. It's the lowest ranking movie we've had on this podcast on IMDb and Rotten Tomato.
It's shocking because even when you say that, you go, then they slashed the budget in half, and it was only 20 million. And then we've just been talking about a film that was made like 8 years later that cost a third of that, which looks like it cost like 4 times that. Absolutely. It feels like. They've not really... I mean, it's tough to do a Superman movie on a budget, by all means, but still, there must have been... It feels like there must have been better ways of doing it.
Yeah, I've got another question you might be able to help me with. When he's rebuilding the Great Wall of China, and it's just putting itself back together again, what is his superpower there? I don't understand.
Did you not get, Dave, from this movie, Superman loves tidying up? So there's a good 10-minute section where he just follows Nuclear Man around going, tidying up a bit.
What is the political message as well?
Nuclear weapons are bad and they should be thrown into a giant net in space. Not sure where they got the giant net from. Like, did Superman knit that himself? Like, what's that about?
It was watching a Green Cross Code film that you have in like secondary school.
Oh, when he gets off the subway, which is actually Old Wick Tube Station, and goes... The New York subway system is still the safest form of transport in the world. And you're like, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. that's the worst line Superman's ever said.
It's such a waste. It's such a waste. It'd almost be better if it didn't have those people in, because it would seem like less of a like they'd been taken advantage of or something. If they'd completely recast it with unknowns, it'd be a bit like it'd be easier to dismiss. But like it feels like it's going to be one of these films I'm going to watch every 10 years thinking, maybe it's not that bad. Can't be, right? It's got Gene Hackman and Christopher Reeve in it. Actually, I must be mad. I'll watch it again because I'm wrong about this and I better like it. And every time I'll watch it and just be like, what were you thinking?
I'm never going to watch it again. So
No. Well,
I'm done.
I've made that mistake too. I've occasionally watched it again and gone, it's not as bad as I remember. And it's always worse. It's always see something else that annoys me.
You know, it's bad when 20 years later when they remake it and call it Superman Returns and they set it after, what is it, Superman 2, and they ignore Superman 3 and 4.
I don't mind Superman Returns, but I don't like that they've dismissed 3.
Yeah.
What's wrong with 3? What's wrong with 3? Nothing.
Richard Pryor's in 3, for God's sake. He's awesome.
He is, and he's really funny in it.
He is.
They're really fun. Yeah, Superman Returns I liked, even though it's a weird sequel, because that's one which, you know, again, I guess that's probably sequel come remake in a way. The idea that what's your plan, Lex Luthor? Same as it was in the first film. Exactly the same plan. What? Haven't we done this? No, exactly. And it's like they reuse the dialogue and you go, I don't know why you're doing. He just wants, and it's always so. But I still think it's a funny idea. That it's just the idea that what Lex Luthor is trying to make is land to build real estate.
Yeah,
and he's just trying to be like, he's just like a landlord, really. That's what he wants. But it's that. But actually, as a supervillain, it makes sense, because if you were a gangster, that's what you'd be doing.
Yeah,
he's sort of doing it on just an epic scale. I guess that's what it's super villainy. It's like, how can we just make all this real estate?
I guess what's unforgivable about Superman 4 is that there was supposed to be 5 and 6 that followed this film, and they got canned because this was so bad.
Well, if they were going to be like this.
Well, yeah, if they were going to be like this, yeah, we didn't want to see them. But we did need more Superman movies. You know, we didn't need a 20-year gap between this and the next one. You know, we could have done with more Superman movies while Christopher Reeve could have made them, you know, and that's the shame of it.
Well, I think
really.
he'd already kind of said, hadn't he? He'd already kind of written himself off of making more after the third one. And this was like a real, like, let's tempt him back.
He massively fell out with the studio.
Everyone.
Everyone pretty much in the third one, mainly because he felt that Richard Pryor was the star and he was kind of sidelined, which is kind of true. But the reason he agreed to come back and do 4 is because it wasn't the same studio making it. Essentially, they sold the rights to Canon, who owned Elstree Studios at the time.
They also offered to make one of his films. So he directed a film after this.
He directed another film, they made that and it was a massive flop, a huge flop.
Yeah.
But so they got him to come back, and they got Margot Kidder back, and they got Gene Hackman back, and you're like, this should have been so good. It should have been so good. But
it wasn't. What film has a sequel, but it's so perfect, but didn't need it?
Probably most of them. Most of them really, I think, probably don't need sequels.
So like The Matrix or Jaws or Taken. Yeah, none of these like...
Oh yeah, none of those need sequels.
Yeah.
I've got time for kind of silly sequels often. I guess it's a recent thing, isn't it, that sequels are now things that often have bigger budgets than the first movie. Whereas I think previously they're always like, we're going to make it, and it's going to have half the budget of the thing we've just made, which I guess is kind of counterintuitive anyway, really. At least it with a similar budget. Yeah, most things probably don't need them. Nothing really springs to mind as one where it's like, why would you have done that? There's all those ones that they make 20 years apart, don't they? They do like Gregory's Two Girls and things. You go, why have you done that?
Yeah.
What have you done that for? And there's bits of it like I quite liked. I didn't mind that Train Spotting too. But at the same time, there's a bit of me going, what's the point?
Oh, yeah, there's no point to that.
Yeah, you're right.
I know people that really like it, and I feel like it might be a film that I'll come back to in a few years, because it's meant to be like, I know people older than me go, yeah, but that's what it's like when you're 50 or whatever. You go, all right, well, maybe I'll revisit it. But, it doesn't feel like, it just feels like those kind of films where a lot of time has passed. Just like, what's the point? Although I do want to, I'm sure I'll fall for it every time. I'm sure every time they do it, I'll go, yeah, I want to see where they are now. I want to see what's going on.
It's the nostalgia that pulls you in. It's like Coming to America 2. I'm like, it was absolute awful.
Didn't mind it. Didn't mind it. Thought it was all right.
You don't mind it?
Although I liked it partly because it was basically, that felt like a greatest hits. Like, it's like,
that's exactly what it was, wasn't it?
It was a bit like a greatest hits and doing a show. It felt almost like you're watching a concert with someone doing the old hits.
Yeah.
I didn't mind it. You go, I suppose this is all I want, really. But it does make me think that's why they'll do them, because I will watch them every time.
Sucker for them.
I am. Even though I'll probably go, I don't want it. But if you've made it, it's like, well, now I want to see it, don't I? Now I want to see what happens. Do you know what, though? I have absolutely zero interest in seeing another Matrix film, though. I can't imagine I'll watch it.
There you go.
I don't think I'll bother.
The first Matrix film.
Yeah, and it is in hindsight. That's true, isn't it? The second one I remember liking, but then it being like, no. Like, it's almost like they did something with the second one, which went, oh, that's an interesting idea. And then the third one is such an odd movie that it was on, I think, ITV2 or something, and I'd never seen it since it came out. And I was watching this film, I think, for about 15 or 20 minutes, and I didn't know what film it was. Do you know when you're trying to guess?
Yeah.
And you go, what is this? Well, it must be something big, because it's obviously cost shitloads of money. There's loads of money in it. So, and I was watching it going, I have no idea what it is. And that's because Keanu Reeves, you go, oh yeah, I forget. He's barely in this film. He's like in at the start and at the end.
Yeah.
And you're watching it, I was just watching it, couldn't even work out what it was. Like, what on earth is this? What a weird film. Just again, where they just start making really odd choices by the third one.
Oh, yeah.
Really odd.
It's the worst one.
But again, it's very much like, I'm glad I never have to see it. But those films kind of spoil the... Like, I can't really imagine watching the first one again. And that's a bad one, because it does make me think, I don't think I can be bothered to watch The Matrix again. Because I just always imagine, oh, and then there's that one and that one, isn't there? Whereas I'm sure I could just watch the first one and enjoy it. But it puts me off. It's like, it just means I never have to think about them anymore. They're just like, they've gone.
Yeah. Right.
That's fine. I've written them off. And a new one as well. It's like a fourth one. You're like, oh, come off.
Nobody needs that. No one needs it. Nobody needs it.
Yeah, I'm still going to see it.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people. I don't think I will. I just don't care. I think. I just don't like everything. I hope it's good.
People don't plan to make bad films, do they? It just happens.
I wish it well. I hope it's all right. I don't really want to see it. I mean, that'll be it when it'll be like, I'll have no interest, and then someone will say, it's good, you know. It's like, oh, maybe I will see it.
What is your dream sequel? That film you always wish had a sequel, got a sequel?
This is a tough one. I was really struggling with this. And the one that I thought of was The Italian Job. And that's just one that I really
Can we just make sure we're talking about the Michael Caine one and not the Mark Wahlberg
We are. I've never seen the Mark Wahlberg one. Although I did read something recently that made me think, oh, maybe.
What did you read?
I read that it was meant to have been a kind of more of a sequel to the first one originally, and I think also Where Eagles Dare, because they have the same writer, and that someone initially wrote a screenplay of it, which made it both a sequel to The Italian Job and a sequel to Where Eagles Dare.
That makes it sound 100 times more interesting than
and I was like, no. But then it points out that's not what they made. You know, okay, I'm out again. Suddenly I was like, oh, really?
Yeah, I would have watched that.
It's a sequel to 2 films.
Wow.
Well, I think it's all meant to be. I think the idea was it was meant to be. It's the same writer. I think it's Troy Kennedy Martin wrote both of them. And I think the idea, which might be a thing that's worth looking into, was I think someone was trying to make a kind of almost shared universe thing where it's all about the gold is the same gold just 20 years later. And it's this sort of gold that's being shipped around different that's mafia cool. and Nazis and whatever, and who has control of this bullion. And so I was like, oh, that sounds great. And then I went, and suddenly I was all,
yeah, it does sound great.
For half a minute, I was all in on, oh man, I can't believe I haven't seen it. Oh, that's not what they did. All right, forget it. No, I'm out again. I'm out.
Have you seen Hobbs and Shaw?
No.
There's a bit because obviously Statham's in the remake of The Italian Job. And there's a bit when they're in a garage and he points to one of the old minis or whatever. And he's like, oh, I did a job in Italy once. And everyone was like, oh, was he in? Is he the same guy? So now everyone's got this theory that Hobbs and Shaw is the same character that's in The Italian Job. If he's the same character in The Italian Job, but that's the same gold that's from The Italian Job and from When Eagles Dare, we've got a universe building. That means it's connected to the Fast and Furious franchise.
Well, I never got into Fast and Furious. I've only ever seen the first one. And again, like I've dismissed all the others. I know people love them, but the first one I remember seeing on the recommendation of someone and going, it's awful. The first one was about guys who nick cars.
Yeah.
And now it seems to be about guys who are flying cars in space.
Yep.
And you go, what's happened in between?
You're not far off.
In the first film, they stole DVD players.
Yeah.
Oof,
the first one is Point Break, but cars instead of surfboards, essentially. And
but it wasn't.
it just
Am I
gets
wrong
madder
about
from there.
this? Wasn't Jason Statham's character in Fast and the Furious? Have I mixed two things up? Wasn't he also meant to be the guy from Collateral? Is that right?
No, the Collateral guy is meant to be the guy from Transporter.
Okay, that's what I've heard. Yeah. That's right.
But if we can put all these films together,
there's a Jason Statham shared universe.
Incredible.
Oh, could we get Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels in there too?
Yes, Turkish.
The Italian Job, there's Michael Caine Italian Job.
The
ending of that was because I think that was again something I watched as a kid, and I remember watching it on like a bank holiday or something, as it still is on at bank holidays. I remember it being an ad break and running through when I was a little kid to tell my mum in the kitchen that there's a movie on called The Italian Job and it's great, and then running back to watch it. Mum, there's a film on TV, it's called The Italian Job, it's got Michael Caine, and she was like, yeah, I've seen it. I know, it's like, good, yeah, just got to say, we've got to get back to the thing, it's just great. And I think that was one of those... maybe one of the first examples I think of a film that ends on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And then also, the older I got, the more I was like, well, of course that's the ending, because it's fun, isn't it? It's supposed to end on a cliffhanger. It's literally a cliffhanger. They're hanging over a cliff. He says, don't worry, I've had an idea. And you never get to see the idea. But later on, apparently they always were going to make a sequel.
They'd always planned a sequel, yeah.
It'd be sort of perfect without it. And then you then I just think, well, God, actually, if they'd made it in that period... with the same kind of tone, because nothing really has that same tone, and it's always something I think about. Like, it's sort of almost my perfect tone of a film, where it's kind of serious, it's comic, and it's funny, and the threat's still, they're going to get killed if they get caught. But I don't know. I think few things really match that tone. I guess something like Where Eagles Dare is a good example. It's that same kind of, and it's very kind of does feel British, and it does have these bits in it which are just, they're almost like comedy sketches bits of it. The bit where he's trying to get his car back is, I think, is like one of the funniest things, where he's trying to be, it's Michael Caine is like a Cockney crook who's trying to pretend to be this aristocracy to talk to this guy who's also pretending to be posh, who's working in a garage. And it's like neither of them, like Michael Caine's totally aware of the situation, and both of them are pretending to be different people. Yeah. And they're having this conversation about getting a car back. It's really sort of clever bits of sort of status that they're kind of creating in it. It's really funny.
And every scene with Noel Coward in it is brilliant.
Yeah,
like it's so funny. It's just like I have really, really good memories of this film. I absolutely love The Italian Job, and I'll try and watch it at least once every year.
Yeah.
This and Escape to Victory and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly were films that I watched with my dad, and they were my dad's films. My dad wasn't a massive sort of movie guy, but these were films that we would watch together when I was a kid, and I absolutely love it so much. And I had a Mini because I love The Italian Job, so
Me too.
I'm 6'6" and I had a Mini. Like, it's insane. I used to have to unfurl myself out of it. And Dave, you had Minis as well, didn't you? Like,
yeah, I didn't have that problem. I'm 5'5.5", so perfect car for me.
Just absolutely love this. Like, and there's so many one-liners in it. Benny Hill is in it, and it's just beautiful. And the Lamborghini Miura that gets crushed at the start, you're like, I feel sadder about that car than anything else, really. Just that beautiful car getting crushed.
I love it. Yeah, I try and watch it about once a year. It's like tea and toast for me. It's just like, it's real comfort watch.
Yeah, on a Sunday.
It's so kind of funny, and it's also like there are bits of it that it's almost like there's gags going on in the background and things, and there's all it's like all these performances. You totally buy into all these characters that are kind of two-dimensional. That they have this, and they're often like feel hurt or something, where they're told they've done something wrong, and you can see them all kind of getting the grump and things, and it all feels that they're all like real I don't know. I really like it. That sort of weird little gang of hoodlums who are all kind of proper. I guess it's kind of Ealing, isn't it? It's that sort of
it is,
like something like Lavender Hill Mob or something. Probably just
so
at the time
clever as well.
updated.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so clever. Like the thinking behind making the heist work and them not quite getting away with it when you think they have. It's such a clever film. Like, you know, and I really love that. I really love that in movies where you think, oh God, that's clever. I wish I'd thought of that. You know, like just, and I kind of like movies where the scoundrel villains get kind of win, you know, like I kind of like it where like the people that are doing something naughty get away with it. that's it
well,
for
that's
me.
it. I guess it's that they're gonna have to get away with it, or I mean, in hindsight you do go, I guess they have to get caught, right? Or they can't. It's almost like, would it be, I mean, I think the audience like them enough that they'd want them to get away with it. And I guess they are villains, right? And they're would you sort of go, if the ending was just, yeah, we did it, would an audience be a bit, oh right, okay, so they just it's a
bit like Ocean's 11 now, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess you probably would want them. You just want them to get away with it.
I think it's also part of they had to get around the production code in America a bit, didn't they? Was that still going in 69?
69. Is it 68? 69?
This was
I would have thought by then you could probably get away with it.
Yeah.
I guess there's a sort of weird morality to it, though, isn't it?
That you can't get away with being a villain.
Yeah,
I don't know. Be some comeuppance for you. That it's just that balancing on the bus. And hold on, lads.
But the end of it is that you get to have it both ways, I guess. So it's either that you're literally they're in both. They've both won and lost.
Yeah.
So they've kind of, you never get to know whether they've pulled it off or not.
Your dream sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have them get the gold back, or would you?
Well, apparently the sequel is meant to be that they helicopters have got ropes on the van and actually take it back. But then they all think they've done it, but the helicopters are run by the mafia. So then it's gone again, and then they have to get it back again.
Oh,
that sounds like it.
And you go,
that sounds like a sequel, doesn't it?
You go, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. That they think that they're being saved, but they're being saved by the people that want it in the first place. So you've got the mafia with it again. So they then have to try and get it off the mafia.
So they are apparently making a sequel, a TV show sequel to it. Apparently,
Paramount
supposed
Plus.
to follow on from that place. From what, Dave? Sorry,
on Paramount Plus is the online service that's going to offer it. But I don't understand how that's going to work, because are they going to carry on from now? Because obviously it's 1969, or are they going to I don't understand.
Do you know what? If they did it as a period piece and they recast people and they cast really well.
Yeah. Who would you have as Michael Caine, though? Who would play that?
Well, you'd hope there's just someone maybe that you don't know who they are, but you'd just be like, get the person who's that person.
Yeah.
To do it. That's what you mean. I don't know who they are, but there's someone who's like 28 or something who's that perfect casting. I mean, it would be a tough thing to do. But I think you could kind of, I feel like there are, I always think in Porridge, Harry Grout in Porridge is basically Noel Coward, isn't he? He's Bridger. He's basically the same character, but 10 years later. And so you can kind of update these things and go, well, who could you get away with this? And someone like that, you kind of think, who would you have now? I don't know, like a Stephen Fry or something as a Bridger or someone like that.
That'd be good.
It'd be that kind of thing, wouldn't it? And have someone like that running a prison, which is kind of the thing what it was then. He's the most unlikely person to be running crime, essentially, from a prison.
Yeah. What I love about the Italian Job, that it's so British, though. It's such a British film. And I'm worried about other countries getting their hands on it, like the remake or whatever, the Italian Job 2003 version.
Yeah, well, I wonder if they're doing it. I mean, if they were thinking about doing it as a period piece, it's that, it always was a Paramount movie, but it's a British movie and it's partly that I think if you're watching it in the States, you're kind of laughing at it because it's British and you're laughing. It's poking fun at itself, really.
Yeah.
About how the idea that, Noel Coward runs crime in the UK and basically has pictures of the Queen plastered all over his cell. Is sort of, it's kind of poking fun at Britishness. I guess that's kind of as much as it's also that he's kind of, Michael Caine's kind of cool and getting away with it. Except he's also not getting away with it. And it starts off with him, his previous job put him in prison. he gets out, his first job back is almost certainly going to fail.
Yeah.
You know, it's that kind of like, it's that they're kind of crooks, but they're not really successful. But it's just, it's that the jobs they're doing are audacious. It's like they're huge. It's almost, I suspect it's more about that, right? That they're attracted by the idea of doing impossible jobs rather than doing easy ones. You know?
Yeah.
And that's
So
the kind of
there
fun
is
of it.
supposed to be a sequel to the 2003 Italian Job called The Brazilian Job, which sounds like a painful waxing to me, and something I think I'd rather have done than watch that movie. So hopefully that's not going to feature in the TV show. But apparently, from it looks like the TV show will be set in 1969.
Yeah, that's how you do it.
As far as I can see.
Bang! Thank God for that.
I mean, it seems like plausible. I mean, if they do it well, good. But like, you would have to. I don't know. I mean, with all this stuff, I'd be kind of. I can already feel that I'm being quite precious about it. But it sounds like they're kind of a bit. You know, it's just a very difficult tone to do, which has not really been repeated. It doesn't feel like you couldn't do it. I feel like, you know, it'd be a fun thing to try and write, wouldn't it? If you were someone, if you try and match the tone of it, it'd be a fun thing.
Don't make it too American. That's my big worry.
Yeah, well, I don't know if
I was trying to say that earlier, Rich, but I was trying to say it in a nicer way.
No, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It needs to be British, otherwise it won't work.
But I think you can do that more now, right? Because I mean, if they're doing that, it'd be pointless not to try and match the tone. Yeah. And it's more like, I don't feel that things have to be American again. They don't have to. It doesn't feel that needs to happen anymore. And TV feels more international.
You are.
So I
right.
feel you could probably get away with.
I like how you were trying to calm me and Rich down.
Well, I am also a bit. I'm slightly worried. Like, it would be like, because it feels like if they messed that up, they wouldn't have another go. So it's like, do it right. Have a think about it. Have a think about it before you start doing it.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, you need to have like he says, it's like I've had an idea. You need to have an idea before you go into it.
And those were Nathaniel Metcalf's Unequal Sequels. Very nearly called him Nathaniel Rateliff, who's a musician instead. But brilliant choices.
I really enjoyed it.
He definitely agrees with you in terms of movie taste, right, Dave? So, you know, Back to the Future 2, Desperado, right up your street. And then Superman 4, which would be close to one of my picks for worst sequel to. Or even, definitely most disappointing sequel. You know, I think that would definitely fit in for me. And then Italian Job. As soon as you told me Italian Job was his pick for Dream sequel, I was like, of course it is. Of course it is. That's a great shout. Such a good shout. Such a good shout. Yeah, if you liked what you heard today with Nathaniel, check out his podcast, which is on Fubar Radio, and it's called The Fan Club, and he does it with Nick Helm, who's another comedian. Yeah,
they're really they love films, so that's why I love them. And some of the report they have with the guests are really funny. I'd recommend the episode with Ramesh Ranganathan. I listened to that one yesterday, and that's really good. Really funny. Thank you, Nathaniel, for coming on. Thank you. It's always nice when people say yes.
It's always nice when people say yes and come on our podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But like you said, he would do it anyway. Even if we weren't recording the podcast, we'd be talking about movies anyway.
That's our kind of guest.
Absolutely. Because we'd be doing it too. We'd be talking about movies as well if we weren't, even if we weren't recording. And if you want to hear more of us, obviously if this is the first show you've tuned into, then there's a whole series worth of back catalogue that you can pick up on. Give it a binge listen. If you're listening to us on iTunes or on Google Podcasts or on Spotify, please make sure you give us a rating, a thumbs up, a little heart, subscribe, because that all helps us in our quest to break into the top 100 of the film and TV charts.
Hashtag top 100.
Hashtag top hundreds. And you can also help with that by following us on Twitter or on Instagram, where we are at Unequal Sequel. And if you've got any suggestions for the show, if you want to come on, if you think, I like the sound of this show, then drop us an email. unequalsequel@hotmail.co.uk. No, .com.
I was so proud of you for a minute because you were doing it all. You were doing Twitter, you were doing the promoting. I was like, I'm not going to have to say anything here. He's nailing it all. And then Phil was at the final. It's unequalsequel@hotmail.com. So please get in contact.
So close.
So close.
Now I know how they must have felt after they put Superman 4 out. They got so close.
Anyway, on to next week, where it'll be our season finale.
Season finale next week. I'm so excited.
Season finale next week. See you there. Bye.
Bye.